Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Continuing with on day 149 with Varta 130 and 131. Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnav ko Jai Shri Krishna. Part 2. In Kambaich there was a place named Brahmapuri, where there was a house which belonged to a Shaivite Brahmin. Murari Das went to live there. On one side lived a merchant, and on another lived a servant of the Shaivite leader. The merchant was always coming to Murari Das's house. One day the leader sent a message to Murari Das with the merchant, "Please tell Murari Das that if he comes to me without his forehead mark and tulsi malas, then I shall do whatever he says." Thereafter, one day, after finishing his seva, Murari Das donned all the Vaishnav garments, forehead marks, and many tulsi necklaces, all of which looked very bright and effulgent. When the leader saw Murari Das, he burned with anger. However, he was attached to correct and formal ritual and got ready a plate for ceremonial welcome. He was about to perform the puja, but Murari Das became insistent. "If you touch my body, I shall have to bathe and wash all my clothes." The other Brahmin got really angry and began to curse Murari Das. "You will be deprived of water, you will be destroyed, and your house will burn." Murari Das replied, "My Guru Sri Gosaiji is the Supreme Lord himself. My path is the true path. No curse of yours can possibly affect me in any way. I shall give this house to anyone who so much as stands at the door, and I shall leave. I shall get out of your Brahmapuri." Murari Das went home, but stayed outside by the door. He called his wife and told her, "Please put Sri Thakurji into his travel box and bring him, along with all our family members, outside." All of them came out of that house. There was one Shukla Brahmin standing nearby, and Murari Das gave the house and all its contents, just as it was, to him. Murari Das then left the village along with his wife and children. In the village there was one Vaishnava who gave Murari Das his own house to live in. Murari Das was thus a great Vaishnava, in that he had no attachment to his belongings and was able to leave them behind. Sri Gosaiji heard all about this. He was very pleased with him and remarked that all Vaishnavas should be like him. This story teaches that resolve is a great characteristic of a Vaishnava. One should be totally steadfast in their devotional way. Part 3. Once Murari Das wrote a letter of supplication to Sri Gosaiji, requesting him, "O Maharaj, please write and send to me such a text as will silence adherence to other paths." When Sri Gosaiji received this, he replied by sending Murari Das his Bhakti Hamsa treatise. When Murari Das received it, he paid his respects to it by placing it on his head and then read it. Murari Das said to Sri Gosaiji, "O Maharaj, this book is very elevated and very beautiful, but it is difficult to grasp." Sri Gosaiji then sent him his Bhakti Hetu Nirnay treatise. After honouring this treatise, Murari Das studied the text and was overjoyed. He again wrote to Sri Gosaiji, "O Maharaj, the Shastras are very hard to understand, and they are without boundaries." When Sri Gosaiji read this, he knew that Murari Das had now understood what he had written. Part 4. Murari Das's elder son studied with his father, and then went to Bijapur, where he defeated all the impersonalist philosophers in debate. He firmly established the path of devotion. The Brahmins from the south spoke amongst themselves, "This Gujarati has defeated us. It is astounding." They asked him to which lineage he belonged. He answered those Brahmins, "My lineage is from Sri Vallabhacharyaji. We are disciples of his son, Sri Gosaiji." One Brahmin from Maharashtra confirmed that this was true and that Sri Gosaiji had also previously been victorious in such debate. Murari Das's son stayed there in Bijapur for some time before returning home. He met with his mother. Murari Das had gone out of this village for a while, but when he returned he heard all this news about the south. Murari Das was very pleased to hear about his son, and Murari Das and his son were both highly qualified scholars with Sri Gosaiji's grace. Thus concludes Varta 130, the story of Murari Das. There is no end to his tale. Continuing with Varta 131, the story of a Vaishnava merchant from Rajnagar who offered sticks. This is a devotee of tamasi disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Anasuya, who manifests from Nanda and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. He was born into the family of rich merchant in Rajnagar. His father was a disciple of Sri Gosaiji. He had his son initiated. The father died when the boy was 27 years old. He would then attend satsang in the home of Bhaila Kotari. He developed the desire to serve Sri Thakurji. Part 1. Once when a party of Vaishnavas travelled to Vraj, they came to Gokul, had the sight of Sri Gosaiji, spent some time there and then went on to Natadwara. This Vaishnava merchant was with the group. He would go to Srinathji's temple every day to serve in some way. He observed how the seva was done. One day at the time of the lunchtime offerings, the head priest called out to the sevaks who were in charge of fetching water to fetch some little sticks and bring them to him. They filled 2 leaf bowls with some little sticks and gave them to the priest. The Vaishnava merchant saw this and thought that these sticks must be part of the regular lunchtime offerings. Many days later, the group of Vaishnavas took their leave of Sri Gosaiji and Srinathji and returned to Gujarat. Just before they left, the Vaishnava merchant requested Sri Gosaiji to grant him some seva. Sri Gosaiji blessed him with the Swarupa of child Krishna. He brought him back to his home. The Vaishnava had some small sticks made, and when he made the Rajbhog lunchtime offerings to his Sri Thakurji, he included a leaf bowl of small sticks in the offerings. One Vaishnava saw him doing this, and he consequently offered 2 bowls of sticks in his Sri Thakurji's Rajbhog. A third Vaishnava also saw this, and he offered 3 bowls of sticks. One day, one accompanied Vaishnava saw these offerings of sticks and asked that Vaishnava the meaning of this offering. He said, "One Vaishnava came back from Vraj, and I saw that he had made an offering, so I copied him." The accomplished Vaishnava went to the first Vaishnava and asked, "Why did you offer those sticks?" He replied, "I used to go to Sri Govardhanaji's temple to serve. One day at lunchtime, I saw Ram Das the priest ask the water carriers to bring him some sticks. I thought they must be part of the offerings, and so I also made such an offering." The accomplished Vaishnava said, "Oh, you silly man, Sri Govardhanaji's is a big temple. When the offerings are made, the offering tables are sometimes not at the same height as each other, and so they use the sticks to stabilize them and even them up. You should not do these things in your seva that you do not understand without first asking." Bhav Prakash. The moral of this story is that the Vaishnavas should make their seva after associating with accomplished Vaishnavas and thereby understand how to make appropriate offerings to them. After this, the Vaishnava began to have regular satsang with other accomplished Vaishnavas and asked them before acting. After some days, Sri Thakurji was pleased with him and began to grant that Vaishnava his direct experience. Thus concludes Varta 131, the story of the Vaishnava merchant from Rajnagar, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his tale. Aaj ke Anand ki jai. जय जय श्री राधे। सब वैष्णवों को सदैन्य सप्रेम सादर जय श्री कृष्ण। श्री गोसाई जी की जय हो। जय श्री राधे।